And here we are doing a hangout on air in Chicago in the last week of August of 2015. How are you today, Barrett?
Good, good. As we were just talking about, I put away my fall jacket for a few more days anyway. Yesterday was like highs in the mid 60s and cloudy, and now we're going back up into 80s and 90s soon. So Chicago weather is nothing if not up and down all the time.
It absolutely is, and we're at the bottom of Lake Michigan, so it seems like everything coagulates down here at the bottom, which is very interesting. And this weekend, if any of our viewers are sitting around thinking, gee, I sure would like to have some kopinka and smoked pork butt and maybe, a few sauerkraut and mushroom pierogies, then you need to jump on a plane and come to Chicago because we've got the Taste of Polina, the Taste of Poland,
Oh,
which is the largest Polish festival in the United States, and it is amping up and going on this weekend.
wow. Well, I have to admit I don't often sit around thinking dreaming about pork butt, but the way you describe it is pretty appealing.
It is, and you finish it all off with some klatschki and maybe some prune or poppy seed klatschki, and life is amazing. I mean, if it was good enough for Copernicus, I mean, damn, you can't get too much better than that. I mean, that
That's true.
man,
That guy was hard to please.
and he, he put us firmly on the map as far as our position in the heavens, which I think is a very relevant thing.
Yeah.
And of course, today that's what we're talking about with the Course in Miracles. We've got our position in the greater flow of the universe around us, and you know, do we really have a need to be ill?
Yeah, I mean, our topic today is we're kind of going to go for a stretch here through the Manual for Teachers. So we're actually starting on number 5 since we did number 4 a few months ago, which were the 10 characteristics of the teachers of God. So we're going to move right on into number 5, which is how is healing accomplished? So for those of you new to the course, the Manual for Teachers is the section towards the end of the book, and it was scribed after the text and the workbook were. And it's also a good place to start. You know, some people start by reading the Manual for Teachers because it's a little bit more accessible. I think the text is beautiful, but it can be challenging for the beginner. So I know people who have started with the Manual for Teachers and then moved into the other parts, the workbook and the text. So wherever you are, this is where we are, at least today. And I feel like maybe I should just read a little bit of it, and that'll maybe get us into the discussion today. So it says here, healing involves an understanding of what the illusion of sickness is for. Healing is impossible without this. The perceived purpose of sickness. Healing is accomplished the instant the sufferer no longer sees any value in pain. So here he's telling us something kind of amazing, which is that we see a value in pain. Now, most of us don't experience pain this way. You know, when we're in pain, we think, oh, that's horrible. Oh, I want to get rid of this. But what we learn as we study the Course is that we are not a victim of the world that we see, and that includes our body. That includes our perception of everything here in this world. And if we are suffering, if we are experiencing pain of any kind, then it means that on some level we actually are choosing that. And our whole goal in studying the Course is to realize that that choice is being made so that we can choose again, so that we can choose peace instead of suffering, we can choose happiness instead of horror. So yeah, I think that this is really a key point in our study of the Course.
Yes, it definitely is. And one of the things I'm sure that people are thinking, as you had uh, read that passage was that, oh, I'm not, choosing my cancer or my sprained ankle or whatever it is. I don't want that. And yet, in actual reality, the Course is, in fact, bringing us into an understanding or an awareness that there is a part of us that we are not consciously aware of. The subconscious mind is a whole realm unto itself. And in many ways, it can be likened to an iceberg, in that the conscious realm is the upper 15%, and 85% of what is happening within our mind is something that we are completely oblivious to. And the entire journey that is laid out before us in the Course in Miracles is to arrive at a point where there is reconciliation between the conscious level of the mind and the subconscious level of the mind. So really, by addressing, healing the mind and removing that barrier that has occurred as a result of that split, is a key element in actual healing. So if you're trying to heal your body by taking medication and by eating properly and all of those peripheral journeys, you're going to find that you may get rid of the problem for a while, but another problem will show up and replace it. And really, the whole point of working with the Course in Miracles is to arrive at the place where the mind is healed. And as a result of that, the body, as well as other circumstances in your life, will be healed. It's not just, it's not just all about the body, but a lot of the drama in our lives, our sense of lack, our sense of limitation, all of the fears that we have, are generated within that aspect of a part of our mind that has a hidden agenda that we're not aware of. And how can we heal that?
Yeah. And I think that question is perfect. I know how do we heal that? We're talking about healing. We're talking about undoing sickness. I think it's important to understand that sickness is really a state of mind. It's a state of mind that believing that we could be somehow separate from God, that we could somehow be without love, that we could somehow be independent and be happy. And we tried all that. We try all the different roads here in the world, and sometimes they may seem to give us happiness for a bit. We might seem to get some sort of peace, or kind of reach that brass ring. But then at some point the ring crumbles, or it tarnishes. It doesn't have the same allure that it used to. And whenever we're putting our happiness in the hands of anything here in this world, we're really putting it in something that's unstable. We're really putting it in something that's temporary and changing. And instead what we can do is we can put our happiness into what is eternal, what is unchanging, what is worthy of us putting our faith in it. And that is the truth of love, that is the peace of God, that is our truest level. I just want to kind of touch on the highlights of what forgiveness is that, again, whenever there seems to be a problem outside of ourselves, whether it's in another person or in our body, the first step is always to remember that we're projecting that onto the world around us. We're projecting our pain, our upset, our guilt, our sadness onto, again, maybe our elbow, or maybe another person. And what we want to do is recall that projection from being outside of us back to the mind. And as we bring it back to the mind, then all of a sudden we have power again. We're in control, and we can make a new decision. So the second step is to say, the pain is not really in my mind either, because the pain is not justified. The pain doesn't have any real cause. It comes from a false source. And as we pull the plug on that false source, then the pain itself can be mitigated. There are a number of stories of people who have had severe pain, and they worked through these mental processes, and then they found that the pain has been released. The pain has gone away. And then just the last step in this process is to ask the Holy Spirit or Jesus for help in seeing it differently, to choose their strength, and to know that they're always with us. So that's kind of like the pattern that we can go through with every problem in our life, including physical pains or sufferings.
Exactly. And, most of it, or I would say all of it, really, in fact, is a result of one singular, somewhat insane desire to usurp the fact that we are God's creation, and to arrive at a point where we have imagined that we have created ourselves. And if you look at your ego and the way the ego is manifest in this world, all of the physical illnesses, all of the emotional craziness, all of the deficits in who we are is what we have put into that program of our own identity. This is how we have defined ourselves. So really, A Course in Miracles is all about correcting that initial misunderstanding that we created, and surrendering to the fact that we are not our own creators, that God did in fact create us as a perfect replication of itself. And if God doesn't have tennis elbow and hernias, then perhaps we don't either. We just have to really approach that in a way where we are invoking our humility. Because the truth is that, all of this is arrogance. And the Course addresses that idea in a very interesting way. It talks about how we are able to embrace our grandeur as God in expression and step out of our sense of grandiosity, which is our ego that loves to scream and holler and rage about how powerful it is, and then it runs and hides the first time a bolt of lightning strikes the earth next to us. So,
Yeah,
isn't that all very interesting?
it's true. It's true. I've heard the description of the ego as the mouse that roared, and I think it's a great description. It's this very little small thing that seems to take on this massive presence. Jesus uses terms like bars of iron or steel, or like impenetrable wall of fear. When we're within the thought system of fear, that's how it seems. It seems like it's unassailable, it's unhealable. But the beautiful thing is that when we do make this switch into peace, our experience becomes the opposite. He talks about the ego as like a wisp of smoke, or a little tiny hill of sand is the body. These things that seem so big and important kind of are reduced to littleness and insignificance. But it is a journey. It is a journey for us to get to that point. And I think as we continue to keep looking at these things, we can find a sense of kindness with ourselves, a sense of compassion, knowing that we only have to take the next step. We don't have to get all the way to no fear right away. We will get there eventually. Our path to that is inevitable. But in this moment, all we really need to do is work on healing what's showing up for us right now. So that makes it a little bit more achievable. It makes it feel like, okay, I can do this. And the truth is, you can, and you have. It doesn't seem like you're already at the end of your journey in time, but time itself is just an illusion. And you'll come to see that all of the story ahead of you is actually already done. And you're already at home in God's hands. You're the prodigal son who's already returned, but thinks he's still in exile. So the good news is that you've already had the buffet, you're having the party. Why don't you go ahead and just join in, rather than suffering.
Yeah, and suffering really is the nature of this realm, of the material experience, because it is built on nothingness. So every time we have something that we absolutely, are completely 100% invested in, something that we believe, that we love passionately, it disappears right in our hands. It is like that wisp of smoke, and so as we're watching this world dissipate around us and dissolve into the nothingness that it actually is, the one assurance that we have is that there is no death. We may conk out and fall asleep one more time or two more times and wake up in a little bit different body in a different circumstance. But the actual fact is, we are eternal, and this whole illusion of death, which is the core, really, of all of our other fears and all of our other struggles. It's the one thing we are least willing to look at is our own mortality, because as we penetrate that veil of illusion, with any kind of serious approach to the subject, we discover our own, invulnerability, our own immortality. So that's the beauty of what the Course presents to us.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that ties right back into this section in the manual that we're highlighting today. Earlier you were talking about our desire to usurp the throne of God and become our own creator, and that's listed right here. Jesus says, "Sickness is a method conceived in madness for placing God's Son on his Father's throne. God is seen as outside, fierce and powerful, eager to keep all power for himself. Only by his death can he be conquered by his Son." And what in this insane conviction does healing stand for? It symbolizes the defeat of God's Son and the triumph of his Father over him. So Jesus here is really talking about the insanity of our thought system and how crazy it is, because God is pure love, God is pure joy, God is our truest nature. Yet we seem to have set up this conflict inside of us, and we're playing out this conflict in our whole world, in our whole life, and it shows up again and again. So the question then becomes, do we want to keep choosing that conflict, or do we want a new perspective? This also reminds me of the scene in the Star Wars movies where Luke is directed to go into the cave to face whatever lies in there, and he sees Darth Vader, and he kills Darth Vader in the cave, and it turns out that it wasn't really Darth Vader at all. It was actually him. And so everything that we're struggling with, everything that we think is a conflict in our life, is actually us. Just might seems to be in a different form. But as we come to see that all these forms don't really add up to hill of beans, and we can see that everything here is some reflection of us. And if it's all us, wouldn't we want to just be happy? Wouldn't we want to just embrace it and love it? So this is the choice that we're always talking about. What do you want to choose?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I find fascinating is that we spend so much time pampering and surrendering and being a slave to our ego. And once you begin to recognize your true identity, there is a shift that brings about a sense of loathing for the ego. All of a sudden you realize what a perverse thing it is that you have imagined yourself to be, and what an astonishingly glorious thing you actually are. So once again, the duality is the essential part of the journey, and resolving that duality is not so much about bringing the ego into a state of surrender as it is stepping out of the ego with a full awareness that was a pretty crazy idea that we had of separating ourselves from the truth of who we are.
Yeah, I get this image of like, you wake up suddenly and you say to somebody next to you like, man, I had the craziest dream. You won't believe what happened in the dream. And it's like, well, that's kind of what's happening here. You're like, oh, are we going to wake up? Are we going to say, oh my God, I can't believe this crazy life. I imagined I was in a body and I could be hurt and I could be killed. I could suffer. Oh my God, it was crazy.
Yes, and Edgar Allan Poe talked of a dream within a dream within a dream, and that's exactly what we have created for ourselves. So perhaps it's time to awaken.
That's right. This is the alarm buzzer. It's buzzing. It's buzzing. Don't hit the snooze button. Get out of bed.
Exactly. Well, that leaves us at the next part of this passage we're in, which is the shift in perception. So in 1 week, we'll be dialoguing a little bit more about sickness and healing and how it occurs as a result of changing our mind.
That's right. This week we talked about the insanity of the ego's thought system in relation to sickness. And next week we're going to discover, all right, what do we do with this mess? So stay tuned and check back for the next part in our ongoing series.
Yes, and don't forget, there is pierogi available for you in Chicago. So come to Chicago. It's like we all went to Woodstock about, 40 years ago now. We can all come to Chicago for good Polish food and communion.
Yeah, and just a reminder, an upcoming event that Chris and I are going to be doing a live event. And it's going to be on Sunday, September 13th in the afternoon. Yeah, it's going to be really great, a conversation about A Course in Miracles.
And I am looking forward to it. So, Barrett, I will chat with you in 1 week.
All right, sounds good, Chris. You have a great one.
You too. Bye.
All right, bye.